I still remember the exact moment everything shifted. I was standing in our kitchen, reheating leftover pasta, when my wife of 6 years looked at me like she was about to ask for the TV remote. Calm, casual, like what she was about to say wouldn't flip my entire world upside down. "Ethan," she said, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "I've been thinking, maybe we should open our marriage." My name's Ethan, I'm 34 now, and this all started about 2 years ago. Up until then, my life looked pretty normal on paper. Good job in IT, own a modest home in the suburbs, drove a decent car, and had been married to Jessica since we were both 28. We'd met in college, moved in together by graduation, and tied the knot before our careers even fully took off. We were that couple, the ones people thought had it all figured out, always smiling at family BBQs, never too dramatic, always buying thoughtful gifts for each other during Secret Santa. Or at least, that's what people saw from the outside. Inside our marriage, things had been fine. Not perfect, not terrible, just fine. And maybe that was the problem for Jess. She had always needed stimulation, emotionally, socially, and especially when it came to being the center of attention. I, on the other hand, liked routine. Peace. A quiet night in with takeout and Netflix. She liked parties, chaos, the feeling of being wanted by everyone in the room. I thought we balanced each other out. But maybe I was wrong. The first real crack appeared during the holidays, about 6 months before that kitchen conversation. We were at her parents' place for Thanksgiving. Her dad was carving the turkey, her mom was asking me about work, and Jess was glued to her phone, barely contributing. That wasn't unusual. She worked in marketing, so she was always on. But that night, she was especially distant. Later, when I asked her what was up, she brushed it off. "Just client drama," she said. I let it go. But then came Christmas. We hosted that year, and my younger sister Lily came with her fiancé. Jess spent the entire evening monopolizing the conversation, turning everything back to herself. When Lily mentioned their upcoming wedding, Jess launched into a rant about how marriage is just a social construct, and that she doesn't believe in monogamy as the default. I laughed nervously, thinking it was one of her usual provocations. Jess liked to stir the pot sometimes, especially when she had an audience. But the way she said it that night, with this sharp little glint in her eye, it wasn't a joke. That's when the first seed of doubt was planted. Still, I didn't want to overthink it. We were going through a rough patch, sure, but what couple didn't? I figured maybe we just needed a trip, some time to reconnect. So, I surprised her with a weekend getaway in early spring, cabin in the woods, no internet, just us. She smiled when I told her, said it was cute, and even thanked me. But the entire trip, she was distant. Checked out. I caught her staring off a lot, biting her lip like she was having an argument in her head. At one point, she said, "Have you ever wondered if we're just doing what we're supposed to do, instead of what we want to do?" I said, "Isn't that just called being an adult?" She didn't laugh. Then came the talk. The open marriage talk. I'd just gotten back from a long day at work, brain fried, and she drops this life-altering bomb on me like she's suggesting we try oat milk instead of regular. I asked her if something was wrong, if she wasn't happy. She just shrugged. "I'm bored, Ethan. I feel like I'm stuck in a loop. Same house, same job, same dinner, same sex. I want to feel excited again. I want to feel alive." I was stunned. I couldn't even respond right away. Not because I was angry, not yet, but because I genuinely didn't see it coming. Sure, we had our ruts, but I thought those were normal, fixable, things you worked through as a team. I asked her point blank, "Are you saying you don't love me anymore?" She looked me in the eyes and said, "I do love you, but love isn't always enough." Now look, I'm not some Puritan. I've read enough Reddit threads to know open relationships work for some people. But this wasn't mutual. This wasn't a deep, respectful conversation about exploring boundaries. This was her unilaterally deciding she wanted a hall pass. I told her no, that I didn't want to share my wife, that I believed in commitment, in building a life together, not stepping out of it whenever things got boring. She sighed, said she figured I'd say that, and that it was fine. I should have paid more attention to that word. Fine. That word's a trap. For the next few weeks, things were weird. We still lived together, still slept in the same bed, but it felt like I was rooming with a ghost. Jess became secretive with her phone, started dressing up more when she went to grab groceries. She'd come home late, claiming she stayed for a happy hour with coworkers, But when I asked who, she'd say vague things like, just the team. At first, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Told myself she was probably just blowing off steam. Maybe even testing me, seeing if I'd change my mind. But then, one night, I came home early from a work event. Her car was in the driveway. Lights were on. I walked in and heard laughter, a deep, masculine laugh, coming from the living room. My heart dropped. I froze in the hallway, just long enough to hear her say, "Shoo, he won't be home until 10. I didn't even walk in. I backed out of the house like I was in a horror movie, got in my car, drove to a gas station, sat there in silence, staring at the steering wheel for what felt like hours. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't yell. I didn't ask for an explanation. I packed my bags while she was asleep, booked a room at a cheap hotel across town, and left a single note on the nightstand. You got what you wanted. I'm out. In the weeks that followed, she called, texted, emailed, swore it was just one time, that she didn't know what she was thinking, that she still loved me. But I didn't respond. Not once. I ghosted my own wife. Because if there's one thing I can't come back from, it's betrayal dressed up as exploration. The divorce process started a few months later. She didn't fight it. I think she thought I'd come around eventually, that I'd cool off. But I was done. Something in me broke that night in the hallway, and there was no fixing it. What she didn't know, what nobody knew at the time, was that my life was about to take a turn she never saw coming. And by the time she realized what she threw away, I was already gone. Far gone. And married to someone very, very different from her. But that's not even the best part. Because a year later, while I was living a new life full of peace, love, and laughter, she came back. And what she did next was worse than the cheating. Much worse. I didn't hear from her for almost 8 months. No texts, no calls, no surprise emails, or we need to talk, ambushes. Just radio silence. And honestly, it was peaceful. Healing, even. I spent those months figuring out who I was without the constant emotional whiplash that came with being married to someone like Jess. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, but it had sunlight in the mornings and a balcony with a view of the skyline. I started going to the gym again. Got back into cooking. Reconnected with old friends I hadn't seen in years because Jess always had some excuse why she didn't like them. Most importantly, I started therapy. I didn't want to carry the bitterness forward. I didn't want to become one of those guys who spent the rest of his life angry at women, lumping everyone into one pile because his marriage went down in flames. I wanted to understand what went wrong, not just with Jess, but with me too. How I didn't see the signs. Why I stayed quiet for so long when things started slipping. How I let myself be the stable one, the safe choice, while she slowly convinced herself that excitement and chaos were worth more than loyalty. That's when I met Claire. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. No dramatic airport chases or love at first sight nonsense. It started at a local coffee shop, where I'd gone to kill some time between therapy and a dentist appointment. She was sitting at the table next to mine, frustrated with her laptop, muttering something about an Excel file that wouldn't open properly. I offered to help, IT guy instincts, and she smiled and said yes. One conversation turned into 2, then a phone number, then dinner, then, well, things just felt easy, comfortable, in a way that didn't feel boring. Claire was sharp, warm, and grounded in a way that immediately put me at ease. She didn't play games. She didn't need constant attention or validation. She actually listened. And little by little, I let my guard down. By month 3, I realized I hadn't checked Jess's socials once since meeting Claire. Not even out of curiosity, but Jess had definitely been checking mine. It started with a string of friend requests I ignored. Then burner accounts, the kind with 0 followers, weird usernames, and no profile picture, watching my stories the minute I posted them. Claire laughed when I told her. "You've got a stalker ex-wife," she said playfully. I tried to laugh too, but something about it gave me chills. And then, it escalated. One evening, Claire and I were out grabbing Thai food. I posted a photo of us, just our hands across the table, holding chopsticks over a shared plate of pad CEW. No tags, no names, just a caption that said, "Peace tastes like this." The next morning, Jess called me. Not texted. Called. I stared at the screen, stunned. I hadn't blocked her. Part of me thought it was petty, but she hadn't dared reach out since the divorce went through. Yet here she was, calling at 7:42 a.m. on a Sunday. I let it go to voicemail. Then she texted, "Jess, Is this what you're doing now? Posting your little dates on Instagram like a teenager? I didn't reply. Jess, you said you didn't want an open marriage. But clearly you just didn't want me. I still didn't reply. Jess, I made one mistake. You threw away 6 years for one stupid night. You're pathetic. That one got to me. Not because I believed it, but because it confirmed what I'd feared from the start. She never saw what she did as betrayal. To her, it was a mistake. A hiccup. Something I was supposed to forgive if I really loved her. She had no idea that the cheating wasn't the worst part. It was the gaslighting, the manipulation, the way she made me feel boring and inadequate for wanting stability, the way she tested the waters, and when I didn't give her permission to jump, she jumped anyway. She wasn't sorry. She was bitter and desperate. Claire, ever the voice of reason, encouraged me to block Jess completely. She made her choice, she said. She doesn't get to rewrite history now just because you're doing better without her. I agreed, but I didn't block her. Not yet. I needed to understand why she was coming apart at the seams now, almost a year later. So I did what I hadn't done in months. I looked at her profile. She had gone from posting curated brunch photos and gym selfies to vague, cryptic quotes like, "Some people don't know what they have until it's gone," and "Healing isn't linear." Her followers had dropped. Her comments were dry. And buried between 2 low-effort selfies, I found a GoFundMe link. Curious, I clicked it. She was raising money for temporary housing and recovery support after being blindsided by an unexpected separation and job loss. I nearly spit out my coffee. She was framing herself as the victim? Of me? I scrolled further. She had listed herself as in between consulting contracts and mentioned a former spouse who abandoned her during a mental health crisis. Claire was standing behind me, reading over my shoulder. "She's using you for pity donations." Apparently, I muttered. She didn't raise much. A couple $100. But the damage to my mood was far more than that. I felt violated. Not just by the lies, but by the fact that she still thought she had a claim on my narrative. That she could paint herself as the poor, discarded woman while I was out here, finally happy again, finally free. And somehow that made me the villain. I blocked her. Everywhere. Or so I thought. A week later, I got a call from my mom. She sounded hesitant, careful, the way she did whenever she had to tell me something I didn't want to hear. "Honey, Jess called me." "What?" "She said she was worried about you. Said you'd been avoiding everyone. That maybe you were having a breakdown. She asked if I'd seen you recently." My blood turned cold. "She what?" I told her you're fine. That you're doing better than ever. "But, Ethan," she seemed really out of it. Like she was trying to convince herself that you weren't happy. I had to sit down. Jess was contacting my family now. That was the last straw. I reached out to a lawyer friend and had a formal cease and desist letter drafted. It wasn't a restraining order, but it was a clear, legal warning to stop contacting me and my family. The message was simple. Do not contact me again in any form. Do not misrepresent me online. Do not involve yourself in my life. This is harassment. It will be escalated if it continues. The letter was sent via email and certified mail. A week passed. No response. 2 weeks. Nothing. I exhaled. Thought maybe, finally, she got the message. Then came the betrayal. Not from Jess, but from someone else. My sister, Lily. She called one afternoon, her voice strained. "Hey, I need to tell you something." "Okay. I've been in touch with Jess." I blinked. "What?" "I didn't want to keep it from you. She reached out a couple weeks ago. Said she was trying to make amends. That she just wanted closure." I thought, maybe she really changed. I was silent. "She told me you're engaged now," Lily added, her voice dropping. "Is that true?" I paused. "Claire and I aren't engaged yet. But yes, I've been seeing someone seriously." "What?" Lily hesitated. "Because Jess, she said she wanted to meet her. She said she wants to apologize. To both of you." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. "Lily, please tell me you didn't invite her anywhere." "No, of course not," she said quickly. "But Ethan," she sounded sincere. "I think she's hurting. Bad. I know she messed up, but..." "She didn't mess up, Lily. She cheated, lied, manipulated me, then painted me as the villain for walking away." I know," she said, sighing. I hate seeing people fall apart like this. She was family for a long time. It's hard to just shut that off." I didn't yell. I didn't rage. But I did hang up with the kind of slow, silent burn that comes when your trust fractures in real time. Claire was the one who voiced what I couldn't. She's triangulating, pulling people from your past back in so she can stay tethered to you. She's not trying to fix things. She's trying to stay relevant. She was right. And what happened next only confirmed it. Because Jess, she didn't go away. She escalated. And the next time I saw her face, wasn't online. It was in person, where she had no business being. I hadn't seen Jess in person since the night I left. That hallway scene, her voice in the other room, laughing with a man she swore didn't exist, had been burned into my memory so deeply, I thought it would be the last image I ever associated with her. But trauma has a way of waiting for the perfect moment to loop back in, like a horror movie villain you thought was dead. It happened on a random Tuesday. Claire and I were at a farmer's market near the river, browsing through fresh produce and pretending we knew what to do with half the vegetables on display. She was holding a bunch of rainbow carrots, teasing me for never having eaten one, when I felt this pressure, like someone was watching. You know how sometimes your skin knows something before your brain catches up? I turned around, and there she was, Jess, standing 10 feet away in a wrinkled denim jacket, oversized sunglasses, and a blank stare that tried to look accidental, like she just happened to be at the same place, at the same time, in the same city she didn't even live in anymore. My spine went rigid. Claire noticed immediately. "You okay?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mouth had gone dry, and my stomach clenched like it was bracing for impact. Jess didn't say a word. She just looked at me. No smile. No wave. Just this eerie, fixed stare, like she was trying to decide if she wanted to come over or burn me alive with her eyes. I gently guided Claire toward a different vendor. "Let's go. What's going on?" "She's here." Claire followed my gaze, her expression hardening. "Are you serious?" I nodded. "Let's just leave." We didn't run. We walked. Casually. Like we hadn't just seen the ghost of a relationship that once tried to eat me from the inside out. We got in the car, shut the doors, and sat in silence for a moment before Claire said, "She's losing it." I nodded again. Yeah. But inside, I wasn't calm. I wasn't collected. I felt violated. And helpless. Because how do you protect yourself from someone who doesn't need permission to invade your peace? The truth? That day broke something in me. I started looking over my shoulder again. Started hesitating when posting online. My therapy sessions, which had become less frequent, suddenly turned heavy again. I felt like I was back in that damn hallway, listening to something I couldn't unhear, frozen in a house that wasn't mine anymore. Claire tried to be supportive. She reminded me that I wasn't powerless. That Jess showing up didn't mean she had control. But something in me cracked open. Not because I thought Jess would hurt me, not physically, but because I realized I'd never fully processed what she took from me. It wasn't just love. It was trust. In myself. In other people. In my own judgment. So yeah, I hit a low point. For a while, I withdrew. I stopped going out as much. Stopped answering texts from old friends. I even told Claire I needed space, which nearly ended our relationship. She handled it with more grace than I deserved. Said she'd give me time, but she wouldn't sit on the sidelines forever. "I love you," she said, "but I won't compete with your past." That line haunted me, because she was right. I was letting Jess win. Again, letting her claw her way back into my mind, my habits, my fears. And for what? Because she showed up at a farmer's market? No, that wasn't the real reason. The real reason was, for the first time, I realized I wasn't done. Not emotionally, not spiritually. I had survived the betrayal, sure, but I hadn't rebuilt. Not truly. So I made a decision. I started over. Not geographically, not financially, internally. First, I cut out every lingering thread Jess had to my life. Changed my phone number. Switched to a new email. Deleted every old photo that still sat in my Google Drive. Untouched, but not forgotten. I even reached out to the few mutual friends we still had and told them, kindly but firmly, that I didn't want to hear about her. Ever. Again. Some understood. Some didn't. Didn't matter. Then, I focused on healing my confidence. I picked up journaling again. Started boxing classes, not because I had any illusions of being a fighter, but because I needed to punch something that wasn't a wall. I pushed harder at work, took on new projects, and found myself getting noticed. By fall, I was offered a promotion. More money. More freedom. A chance to work remotely and finally have the flexibility Jess used to mock me for craving. "You always want safety," she once said. "That's not sexy." Well, safety bought me peace. And peace, it turns out, is sexy. especially when you've lived in chaos for years. And then, slowly, but surely, I started opening myself back up to Claire. I told her everything. Not just the facts, but the feelings, the self-doubt, the shame, the part of me that still felt like a man whose wife cheated on him because he wasn't enough. She didn't flinch, didn't scold me. She just listened. And then she said something I'll never forget. You weren't boring. She was just addicted to being chased. That was the moment I realized how wrong I'd been to carry the guilt. Jess hadn't left because I failed her. She left because she couldn't sit still. Because the idea of contentment felt like a cage to someone who craved constant validation. She needed novelty like a drug. And I was the rehab she resented. So I stopped apologizing. And I thrived. Claire and I grew stronger. We traveled. Spontaneously, without drama. We had arguments, real ones, but they ended in solutions, not cold shoulders or scorekeeping. She met my family, and they adored her. Even Lily, who'd been on thin ice since the Jess call, pulled me aside and said, "Okay, she's amazing." I started mentoring at work. Volunteered at a youth coding boot camp. Life was good. Not perfect, but real. And then, something wild happened. I got invited to speak at a tech summit in Austin. And that's where everything changed. Because guess who else was on the speaker list? Jessica. Apparently, after months of floundering, she'd scraped her way into some authentic branding consultancy niche and was giving a talk about pivoting after personal hardship. The irony was so rich I could have bottled it. At first, I thought about backing out, avoiding the drama. But then I thought, why should I? I earned my spot. I wasn't the same man who left a note on a nightstand and ran. I'd rebuilt from the ground up. And if fate wanted to put us in the same building again, let it. Claire encouraged me to go. You're not going there to confront her. You're going to be you. That's enough. So I went. The summit was a 2-day affair. My talk was on day 2, hers on day 1. I avoided the main conference hall that morning, choosing instead to take a long walk by the lake and rehearse. I figured I'd skip the awkwardness altogether. But that afternoon, as I walked into the networking mixer, drink in hand, chatting with a fellow speaker about server security, I felt a familiar chill behind me. Ethan. I turned. And there she was. Again. Jess. But this time different. The glow was gone. Her hair was thinner. Eyes tired. Makeup trying too hard. She wore a blazer that didn't quite fit and a smile that looked like it had been stapled on. Wow, she said, looking me up and down. You look good. I didn't respond. I nodded politely. She didn't take the hint. I didn't expect to see you here. You're not the only one who pivoted, I said evenly. There was a beat of silence before she said, I heard about Claire. I didn't ask how. I just said, she's wonderful. I'm happy for you, she lied. I gave her nothing. And in that moment, I saw it in her eyes, the exact moment she realized. She had lost. Not because I was trying to win, but because I no longer played the game. I excused myself politely, turned back to my conversation, and left her standing there. Just another face in a room full of people moving forward while she was stuck trying to rewrite the past. But what she did next, that changed everything. Because Jess wasn't done. And the stunt she pulled after that event wasn't just petty. It was public. And it nearly blew up everything I'd built. Claire and I had just returned from the tech summit in Austin when the fallout hit. The moment I stepped off the plane, my phone blew up. LinkedIn notifications, missed calls from colleagues, and a flood of emails with subject lines like, just checking in. Everything okay? And the most chilling, saw the video. What the hell is going on? I had no idea what they meant, until someone forwarded me the link. There she was, Jess, standing on stage during her presentation at the summit, giving a talk that, at first glance, seemed professional enough. The title was Reinventing Your Brand After Personal Disruption. But halfway through, her tone shifted. She started telling a story, not a hypothetical, not anonymized. A story about her ex-husband, a tech bro who walked out on her during the darkest time of her life, who refused to grow emotionally, who weaponized silence instead of healing, and who found someone younger, richer, and blonder the moment she stopped playing the perfect housewife. Every single detail was aimed to expose me, without ever saying my name. But I didn't need her to. Anyone who had followed our relationship online, who had worked with either of us, who had eyes, they knew exactly who she meant. And that wasn't even the worst part. Someone in the audience, some TikTok wannabe influencer with a lifestyle vlog, had recorded the segment and uploaded it as part of a real talk from the conference series. Within hours, it spread. Comments flooded in. Supporters of Jess's vulnerability cheered her on. Others were more skeptical. But the damage was done. Colleagues of mine who didn't even know the details were now whispering. Investors on a project I'd been pitching suddenly pulled back. And worst of all, my boss called me into a video meeting. She didn't name you, he started gently. But a few clients have already called, asking if we're involved in whatever this is. I wanted to scream. Instead, I said, I'll handle it. But the truth? I didn't know how to handle it. Until that night. I sat on our balcony, scrolling through the clip again, watching her perform my downfall for applause. My hands were shaking, not out of fear, but rage. And then Claire came outside with 2 mugs of tea and sat beside me. She thinks she's clever, Claire said, sipping hers calmly. She's telling the world her version of the story. I looked at her. I can't fight this publicly. If I start posting my side, it becomes a war. Good, she said. That caught me off guard. Good. Claire turned toward me with that quiet fire in her eyes, the one that reminded me why I fell for her in the first place. Jess is playing chess with a blindfold on. She thinks you're still reacting, still scrambling to keep up. She doesn't know you've already won. She's exposing herself. I blinked. What are you saying? I'm saying, let's not react. Let's build something. And let her watch. That was the moment everything shifted in my mind. Jess wanted attention. She wanted sympathy. She wanted to rewrite the story with her as the wounded phoenix and me as the villain. So I decided I wouldn't correct her. I'd bury her in success instead. Not just move on, but move up. And make damn sure she saw every step. The first thing I did was call in a few favors. One of my old college friends, Marlon, was now a brand strategist with an edge, the kind who thrived on spin wars and reputation management. I told him what happened, sent him the clip. He watched it in silence and said, "You want to burn her or freeze her out?" "I want to eclipse her." He laughed. "Perfect. We got to work." First, we quietly boosted my personal brand. The real one, not the corporate robot I'd become during my years with Jess. I started writing again, sharing my insights on emotional resilience, leadership after betrayal, and the art of staying grounded through chaos. No dirt, no drama, just value. People responded. My following tripled within 3 weeks. Podcasts reached out. Webinars. Guest columns. One of the major tech blogs even ran a piece titled From Divorce to Disruption: How Ethan Vale Reinvented Stability in Tech. Jess didn't get a mention, but she knew. And how did I know that? Because the next week, she posted her version of a rebuttal. A vague Instagram reel with dramatic music and a caption, "They love to see you silent. Until you speak truth." It tanked. The comments were filled with people asking, "Who's this about? And are you okay?" And "Girl, just move on." She tried to spin a redemption arc, but it was already too late. While she was still shouting into the void, I was closing a major deal with a startup accelerator. The funds we secured would be the launchpad for a wellness tech initiative Claire and I had been quietly planning for months. You see, Claire wasn't just amazing. She was a millionaire in her own right. Inherited wealth? No. She'd co-founded a productivity platform back in 2018 and sold her stake at the right time. She never flaunted it, never led with it. But once we moved in together, I started to understand just how deeply strategic she was, how long she'd been playing the game with quiet power. You don't beat people like Jess by screaming louder, Claire once told me. You beat them by outlasting them. And that's exactly what we did. Together, we built the platform, an app centered around resilience, journaling, and cognitive habit tracking. The kind of thing that would have helped me dig out of that post-divorce mental pit faster. Claire handled the UI and design. I coded the backend. We called it Anchor. And we didn't just launch it. We debuted it at the next summit. Same venue, same city. 1 year later, I gave the keynote. I stood on that same stage where Jess once told the world I was emotionally stunted, and I spoke about rebuilding. Not just your brand, your life. I didn't name her, didn't even mention the past. But anyone who had been in that room a year ago, they felt the contrast like a slap. Claire was in the front row, glowing with that calm strength she always carried, and I swear, as I wrapped up my talk with the line, sometimes the storm isn't there to destroy you. It's there to clear the path. I saw something shift in the room. It was mine now. The respect, the narrative, the momentum. But Jess? She didn't take it well. Not at all. Because that night, she did something desperate, and the revenge I'd been quietly preparing finally had its moment. Because she came at me with one final, catastrophic move. And she had no idea. She'd just walked into a trap I'd been setting for months. That night, the night after the keynote, I was riding the high of it all. Claire and I had gone out with a few close friends to celebrate the launch of Anchor, which had exploded with interest almost immediately. Downloads were already surging, and several angel investors had asked for meetings by the end of the conference day. I should have been floating on air. Instead, I was handed a glass of champagne and an envelope. It came from the front desk of our hotel. "A woman left this for you," the clerk said. Said it was urgent. I knew before I even opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten, no less, in that same looping cursive Jess used for birthday cards. It started polite, congratulatory, even. "You've really done well for yourself, Ethan. I'm proud of you." But halfway down, the tone changed, sharpened. She accused me of manipulating the narrative. Said I'd left her no choice but to reclaim her version of the truth. Said she still had messages, screenshots, things I'd said in private during our marriage that, taken out of context, could paint me in an unflattering light. And then came the threat. "If I don't hear from you by the end of the week, I'll have no choice but to tell my story. Publicly. Completely." She wanted hush money. That much was obvious. It was a blackmail letter dressed up in pastel language. Claire read it and said, without missing a beat, "She's cornered. This is the sound a balloon makes right before it pops." I didn't get angry. I didn't storm off. I didn't even respond. Because she wasn't the only one who had been keeping receipts. Let me rewind. After Jess's first public smear campaign at the last summit, I'd taken Marlon's advice and started quietly collecting my own insurance. Not to use unless I absolutely had to. But if she escalated, if she tried to ruin me again, I'd be ready. So over the months that followed, I compiled a quiet digital library. Her old blog posts, the ones where she trashed clients by name and claimed to fake emotional connection just to land deals. Voice recordings she'd sent during our separation. The ones where she admitted to cheating, to manipulating me into staying, to pushing you just far enough to see if you'd snap. Screenshots of text threads with mutual friends where she openly laughed about getting sympathy points from my followers while dating some rebound yoga guy she later ghosted. Even her GoFundMe had been archived, with dates and edits clearly showing how she fabricated hardship while still living in a luxury condo paid for by her parents. But I never released any of it. Never needed to. Until now. I gave Marlon the envelope. Let him read it. His face lit up like he'd just been handed a live grenade. "Oh, she messed up. What do we do?" I asked. He grinned. "We don't do anything. We let her step on the landmine herself." The plan was simple. Draw her out. Let her get so confident in her leverage that she crossed a line she couldn't walk back from, and then calmly, surgically, dismantle her entire web. We didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, Jess went live on Instagram. Tears in her eyes. Piano music in the background. One of those cheap tissue boxes in frame for dramatic effect. And the title of the stream? What Really Happened. She spoke for nearly 30 minutes. About her pain. About the betrayal. About the man she trusted who turned cold. She never said my name, but again, it didn't matter. She referenced my job, the summit, the app launch. She even said, "I watched him walk across that stage like he'd never broken someone's soul." Claire and I sat on the couch, watching it on mute, sipping tea like we were at a movie premiere. At the very end, Jess said something she should never have said. She claimed I was emotionally abusive. Not distant. Not detached. Abusive. She said I had gaslit her for years, that I cut her off from her friends, and that I controlled her finances. And just like that, she stepped over the line. Because now it wasn't just about image. It was defamation. And the moment that stream ended, Marlon flipped the switch. First, we sent a takedown notice, a formal legal one, through a very expensive lawyer Marlon had worked with before. Not an empty threat. A full cease and desist, paired with a pre-litigation notice. The language was airtight. But that was just the appetizer. Because the real revenge was proof. While Jess's followers were still praising her bravery and sharing the stream, we uploaded a private press kit to several journalists, not tabloids, but real, respected tech outlets. The kind that fact-check everything and love a redemption arc that turns on its head. The kit included Screenshots of her emails threatening to go public unless I paid. A timeline of her GoFundMe campaign with records showing she'd been fully employed. Audio recordings where she admitted, word for word, "I cheated because I was bored and I didn't think you'd leave." And, most damning of all, a video she had once recorded, meant as a vlog, where she mocked her therapist for taking my side like a chump. I just cried for 20 minutes. That's all it takes. The first article dropped within 72 hours. The title? From Victim to Villain, the fabricated fallout of Jessica R. It didn't name her fully. They were careful, but it laid out a brutal side-by-side comparison of her claims and the hard evidence that disproved them. It ended with a quote from me. "I never wanted to make any of this public. But once false allegations are made, silence becomes complicity." It exploded. Her comment section turned overnight. Fans turned skeptics. Skeptics turned critics. She went private, then deleted her Instagram, then locked her LinkedIn. But it wasn't just social media. Brands started pulling out of her affiliate deals. The wellness podcast she'd been trying to launch removed all episodes from their hosting platform. And one of her old clients, a major branding agency, publicly announced that they would be re-evaluating our past work with Ms. R. But even that wasn't the final blow. That came a month later, when Jess showed up in small claims court, suing me for emotional damages. I walked into the courtroom with Claire beside me, calm, focused, and with our lawyer, the same one who had crafted that press packet, carrying a folder that might as well have been nuclear. Jess represented herself. It was sad, honestly. She stammered, cried, tried to explain that she wasn't after money, just justice. She claimed I had destroyed her online business, that I had weaponized influence, that Claire and I had orchestrated a smear campaign. The judge wasn't buying it, because we had everything. The timelines, the receipts, the original envelope, with her blackmail letter in her own handwriting. I didn't even have to testify. The case was thrown out before it got past opening statements. But the real victory wasn't the dismissal. It was the look on Jess's face as we walked past her on the way out. Me, with my arm around Claire. Calm, peaceful, untouched by her storm. She tried to catch my eye. I didn't look back. We got married quietly a few months later. A small ceremony in the mountains, just close friends and family. No paparazzi, no drama. Just vows written from the kind of love that doesn't need to be broadcast to be real. And today, Claire and I still run Anchor together. It's grown beyond anything we imagined. Thousands of users, partnerships with wellness centers, featured on major platforms. We've even hired therapists and developers to keep building. But the best part? Peace. Not the loud kind. The quiet, solid kind you feel in your bones. Jess, as far as I know, lives in a shared apartment now. No brand deals. No speaking gigs. Most of her old content's gone. The last time I heard her name was in a private message from a mutual acquaintance. Someone who just said, "She asked me if you'd ever forgive her." I didn't reply, because there's nothing left to say. And forgiveness isn't always spoken. Sometimes, it looks like letting someone disappear from your story while you keep writing a better one without them. The last chapter closed itself. But my story, it's still being written. And she's no longer in it.